Hello, I'm Chris, and this is Gav, and we're here to talk about cereal, as it says behind us.
Yeah, it's a bit of a spoiler, isn't it?
So, Gav, what is cereal?
Well, it's a thing that I came to, it's a spin-off of This American Life, which is a podcast. If you haven't heard it, you definitely should listen to it.
Yeah.
And it's basically a story told of a series of podcasts. And it's all true. It's all a completely true story. So this one, the first one, it's sort of like a documentary-style investigation into whether or not this guy, Adnan Saeed, killed his ex-girlfriend way back in 1999. I mean, he's already been convicted. So there's sort of Sarah Koenig, the lady who is sort of leading it, this lead reporter, she is sort of, I guess, finding out if he actually did do it.
So he's been in prison for 15 years.
Yeah.
And she's investigating this case. Why is she investigating it, though?
Well, she basically investigated a lawyer who had a couple of cases that were a bit iffy. That lawyer's now dead. But she investigated this lawyer who, one particular case that she believes she got wrong. And I think someone who's related to Adnan read this article and then came to Sarah and was like, do you mind having a look at this case as well? And she's obviously become a little tiny bit obsessed with it.
Yeah.
As has quite a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, well, it's the number one podcast in the world right now, which is kind of how I found it myself.
That's right, yeah.
And it's 7 episodes in, so it's not been going long. I think it's one a week.
No, yeah.
And it's fair to say we in the office are gripped, so we thought we should do a video on it just to talk about why we're watching and what's going on.
Well, that's the thing. You just said yourself, watching. That's the thing. It's like...
Sorry, listening.
That's the thing. It's really hard because you come to it and you think... people have become obsessed with, like, you know, the same way they talk about, like, Breaking Bad or, like, movies and things like that. Like, you know, we're coming to the office every day. Every Thursday is like, oh, it's a new episode. Have you listened to it? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's become a big thing. And I think part of that is this episodic, you know, you sort of want to find out. But at the same time, apparently, I mean, Sarah's on record as saying that she doesn't know how it ends. And I think for me, that's quite compelling.
Yeah, I'm confused. How is she piecing out? Because each week we get a new interview or a new kind of aspect or look at the case. Is this all pre-prepared, or is this happening in real time, or is it just a bit vague? Do we not really know how she's doing
Well,
this?
apparently it is happening in real time. Like, I remember reading somewhere it was an interview that came out 2 days before one of the episodes, and they said, look, we're still working on this week's episode. Like, so it doesn't seem like they're that far ahead of us, and apparently they don't know how it's going to end. Like,
so it's reminding me of the TV show Murder One.
Okay,
I don't know if you remember that, a long time ago. But that was kind of fictional and entertainment. This is real. Like, I'm feeling a bit weirded out by being so entertained by this story about a girl who actually died and a guy who might have done it, and it's a bit twisted.
It is kind of, that's the thing.
I guess it's like reading real life crime, isn't it, or something like that.
It is, yeah, and they do a really, really good job on the show, I think, anyway. Some people don't think so, but I think they do a really, really good job on not focusing on the victim, even though, you know, at the end of it, a girl is still dead.
Yeah.
They do a really, really good job on sort of, not forgetting about that, but they don't go into graphic detail. I don't think it's ever sort of sensationalized, and I think, I mean, This American Life is where Sarah's come from, and I think they're perfect at doing that, I think, like presenting a story and going, hey, here's the facts, here's the people, you make up your own mind about it. I think she's really good at doing that.
And so it's fair to say we don't know where this is going, or how do we not know how long it's going to last? Does it last as long as it needs to?
I think that's what they said, but I think they say roughly between like 10 and 12 episodes is what it's going to be.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's kind of catching everyone up on what this show is and why they should be watching it, listening to it.
It's hard, man. Yeah.
But we're going to talk about this week episode now, I think, aren't we? Episode 7. So if you haven't been listening, maybe go away now, catch up. And it took me about a day to do all this.
Yeah.
It's something that you just, once you start, you can't stop listening.
Oh, yeah, definitely not. I came to a 3rd episode in, and I think they're between sort of like, the first one's the longest one, which is about 50 minutes. Yeah. And after that, they vary between 40 and 30 minutes. Yeah. But after, you know, I listened to the first one, went straight to the second one, straight to the third one. Yeah. It's, you know, it's hard. Like,
So go away, catch up, and come back. And if you're listening already, then we're going to talk about what happened in this episode. Yeah. So, what happened in episode 7?
Well, to be honest, I've listened to it twice now, and I listened to it the first time through, and I thought, you know what, this actually feels like, you know, sort of like the midway point in a TV show where there's like a filler episode, or there's a character that they think, we haven't given this guy or these people enough time. And for me, in Lost, it was always like the Asian couple, because they never got any kind of screen time, and it was like, but their episodes always felt like filler to me. I don't know why, like, just weren't very interesting. That episode, for me, the first time I listened to it through, I was like, you're not getting any new information. But the second time I listened to it through, so they brought on these people called, what are they called? The Innocence Project.
Innocence Project. Yeah. What's that? Deirdre Enright is the lady that you kick off hearing from her, and I agree. Like for the first 15 minutes, you're thinking, this is just two people chatting. Like, what is this actually? Because every previous episode has given us so much information for us to pick through ourselves. This was just two people talking.
Yeah.
But then it goes somewhere quite interesting, I guess.
Yeah, it does. So basically, the Innocence Project, I've just printed out there, this is what their mission is. The Innocence Project is a national litigation and public policy organisation dedicated to exonerating wrongfully convicted individuals through DNA testing and reforming the criminal justice system to prevent further future injustice. So Sarah's come to this lady because she heard about a case that was very similar to Anand's. So she's come
to a guy
them.
Called Justin Wolfe.
That's right, who they exonerated through DNA testing. And it's almost like, whether or not you believe these things happen in the way that they happen, but it's halfway through the conversation that Deirdre goes, hey, why don't we start investigating your case? Do you believe it happens like that? Like, I really hope it does. Because
I don't know.
It's so organic, like they're literally having a conversation and then she goes, hey, why don't we start looking at your case? And that's what they start doing.
I don't know. I haven't thought about that. Yeah, but...
The thing is, once you start questioning that, you have to question everything she says.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Sarah and I believe her, so I like to take this at face value.
Yeah.
But that's when you're suddenly like, well, I was kind of thinking as I've been listening to the episodes, why aren't more people involved in this investigation?
Yeah,
and so this is the logical step. I mean, I think I know the Innocence Project. I'm just thinking about them now, like from the movie Hurricane.
Okay.
About the heavyweight boxer Ruben Carter who was
them?
exonerated. I think it was them.
Oh, wow, okay,
I'm not
cool.
going to go on record saying it, but I think it was them. So it's really interesting what they do.
Yeah.
And it seems logical that they would become involved in this when it does seem there's so much reasonable doubt.
That's right, yeah.
In this case.
Well, that's the thing. When they start talking to them, so she meets this team, and she meets this, amazing team of people, and then she asks them right at the end, like, do you think there's enough to convict him? And they're just perplexed by this. Like, there's absolutely no way. And like, it's what was really interesting to me is how quickly so a huge part, obviously, if you've been listening, you should know, but like a huge part is these cell phone records that basically the entire case was set upon.
Which are quite confusing.
It is.
You get a bit bogged down in that, and I got a bit confused, to be honest.
That's
so
right,
it was interesting having these people explain it again.
Yeah.
And how it all seemed a little bit...
Well, they instantly, like how quickly, considering this case has been built on these cell phone records, the Innocent Project come in and go, that's rubbish. Like, it's absolutely rubbish. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Because, they make a really, really good point where she just says, why nobody is calling someone up going, okay, I'm on my way to kill a guy, killing someone. Okay, now I've killed a guy. Like, you're not going to do that. Like, So that was really interesting to me.
And I also like what Deirdre said about advising Sarah not to get too attached to any piece of evidence or any conversation, and that's true because you're going through, and the way they're spacing it out is each week you're kind of changing your mind a little bit, or you're being spoon-fed stuff that's changing your opinion. And what she said, because she's dealt with a lot of these cases, is don't get attached to any one piece of information, any one conversation, and that's exactly what I had been doing actually. And that's why you're changing your mind. You've got to sit back until you've got as much information as possible, and then make your decision, and as informed decision as you can. But it's difficult, isn't it, though?
It's really, really difficult. And I think I felt it most in episode 6 because Sarah just seemed, for me, just frustrated. And it almost like, she's making this case against him. I think the episode's called The Case Against Anand Saeed. And she's making this huge case against him. And it's almost like she's attached emotionally, but I think she's just drained. Yeah. And I think this... Even though at the beginning I was like, oh, this is a bit of a rubbish episode, actually by the end I'm like, no, I'm really excited now because it seems like they're going to sort of kickstart it a little bit more.
You're reinvigorated, aren't you?
Definitely,
And I guess one part of it is the DNA, which is something they're clearly going to investigate, which could reveal a lot.
That's a massive thing,
The other part, though, is they keep mentioning informants.
That's right,
as well. That's come up a couple of times over the course of the show. And it's like, well, what does that mean? Where's that coming from? And I guess it's... You're our other suspect in the case, really. The other prime suspect.
Jay. Like,
Jay.
I'm obsessed with this. So I've been on Reddit, just like, and
right. So what's going on the internet then? Because I've no idea.
Well, on Reddit, like the main theory. I mean, there are a couple of crazy theories, but the main one is that Jay is a police informant. Mm-hmm. Now, because there's some case files that are referred to, and the fact that it's been kept in such the dark. Like, we keep hearing from this guy. But no one has said, like, where he is, what's happened to him. Like, he must have been, like, has he come forwards? Like, I just don't get it. And I think next week's episode is all about Jay. But, like, when you're hearing it, like, I was talking to a friend of mine. He was like, well, at the end of the day, even if Jay didn't kill her, he still buried a body. Like, that's not good, is it? Like, you can't bury a body and then not go to jail.
Yeah, he's the key to the case, isn't he?
Definitely, yeah.
So it's kind of frustrating that we've not really heard enough about his situation now.
Yeah.
Along the way. So I guess there's hundreds of thousands of people listening to this show.
Yeah.
Not this one.
No,
but,
yeah. Hopefully. But yeah,
but Serial.
I think it was like episode 5, there was 850,000 people downloaded it.
Right. So the internet must be solving the case in some way, shape, or form. And where are the police as well? Because surely they know that.
Well, I think they said in episode 1 or 2 that the police just didn't want to speak to them. They're just like, at the end of the day, why would they? You know, this case has been tried, it's gone.
But that's 6 weeks ago now. Like, they've got to be under quite a lot of pressure to reopen this and get looking at it again.
But then at the same time, maybe, you know, it's probably quite easy to dismiss it. Like, I remember, like, it reminds me, like, sometimes of, like, Zodiac. Like, it reminds me of, like, Jake Gyllenhaal's character when he's going back to the police, and the police are like, why are you looking into this? Like, we looked at that guy. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned Zodiac. The one film it made me think of was River's Edge. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's from about 85, 86.
I haven't, but I looked at your thing you sent me,
Yeah, Keanu Reeves, Crispin Glover, Dennis Hopper's in it. And that's based on a true story that happened a couple of years before in a small American town, and it was about the killing of a teenage girl. Her boyfriend, I believe, strangled her to death from what I remember. And how this reminds me of that is just the banality of it, the way that no one took it seriously, the way that this girl was there for a few days. Everyone in school knew about it. Some people went and looked at the body, but no one actually said or did anything about it. And this reminds me of that when I hear some of those interviews in earlier episodes with the teenagers.
Yeah.
It's just weird. This real huge tragedy happened in their community, and they were kind of around it.
Yeah.
And yet no one seems to be that cut up about it, or...
I guess we have to remember, this is happening in 1999, isn't it? Yeah, because that's one of the things that early on I was like, well, Adnan definitely did it, because just how chilled he is on the phone all the time, but then,
15 years...
He's been in prison for 15 years. Like, there's a part of me that's almost like I'd like him to have done it, because he's having a great time right now in prison, isn't he? Like, all this stuff is going on around him.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I've written down here, and I thought this was quite interesting. So this is not the Innocence Project. This is ever. There have been 321 post-conviction DNA exonerations in United States history. Like, and the Innocence Project. That's what they spend all their time doing is DNA stuff. Like, to me, it's not going to be a satisfying ending to this show.
Do you think not?
Definitely not. And I think, Sarah herself addressed that in this episode, where she was like, she said, my biggest fears are going to come to this, come to the end and be like, I don't know. And I think that's what's going to happen. Like, I really, really think that's what's going to happen. And I think, like, next week is going to be, like, a huge, huge one because of Jay's thing. But
have you come to an opinion?
I don't know. I tell you who has, though, is people who've been tweeting at us.
Yeah, we put it up on our Twitter yesterday, didn't we, when we thought we'd do this show. So let's hear what people had to say.
So Andrew Taylor says, got to be someone else involved. So, I mean, that's a really good point, because, we've only got the information from the podcast. So there could be, episode 8, they go, and then this guy comes in and changes everything. But I really hope that doesn't happen. Because I'd feel a tiny bit cheated, I think, if that happened.
A bit manipulated.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Because you spent almost like 6 or 7 hours with all this information, and then to have like a brand new piece of information again. I mean, that is actually how TV shows and stuff work. But I don't know. I would feel a little bit.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah.
What else did we have?
Liam Rafferty says, I think Adnan and Jay did it together. At the very least, Adnan knows more than he's letting on. Jay's the key to it all. Do you think Adnan knows more than he's letting on? I think he's too wishy-washy to actually do that. And there was a thing in this episode where Deirdre was talking about when she was speaking to an innocent guy, and she talks about in reference to the crime scene. The guy's like, well, I don't know the crime scene. Like, and that was a really, really sweet moment. But I think Adnan has quite a lot of those moments as well, where he's like, I don't know, I literally can't tell you.
He feels real, doesn't he?
I think the fact that he can't account for these 21 minutes, and he's so honest about that, like. I think if he'd done it, you'd know exactly which you'd know every single second of your time.
Yeah, but Sarah's right in the fact that he knew that day was a big day because he got that phone call, and it is weird that he's suddenly. You would immediately just kind of think, well, what was I doing at that time, so I can tell people because it's clearly going to come up.
I know.
What else have we got?
This is an interesting one from Simon Richards. Says, who needs TV? Jay has a lot of explaining to do. Phone pings are suspect, and what about the new boyfriend? So that's Dawn, which is Peter Griffin, says, it's Dawn, her boyfriend at the time. # free Anan.
And from what I remember about him is he has like a watertight alibi, doesn't he? Working at
Lens Crafters.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, you do wonder why aren't they talking about this much older boyfriend?
Yeah.
That's always a bit of an odd situation.
Well, that's the thing that Deirdre mentions in this episode. She's like, why aren't they looking to him? But then they say, look, he's got an alibi.
He's got the alibi.
Why would they look at him again? It's the same thing when they said, they keep finding, when they find something like that doesn't pertain to what they think is going on in the case, they sort of dismiss it. So I think if Don is like, well, I was definitely here, why would they then question him even further? He's got an alibi. They've got to look somewhere else.
Man, it's confusing.
It's all about Jay. It's all about next week's episode in Jay.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be an absolutely huge episode.
Cool. Well, we want to know what you think, I guess. And should we keep doing this? Because we're up for continuing. We're going to talk about it at the office. Should we talk about it on camera and put it on the site?
Yeah.
So let us know what you think about the show in the comments. And yeah, if you like what we're up to, then I guess we'll be talking about Jay next week.
Cheers.